So I love my job. I love what I do. I love going to the National Archives. I love being able to look through these original records for these soldiers. But I got to tell you, one part of my job that I really don't like is when I have to be a heartbreaker. Let me explain what I mean. I get emails from people all the time, every day. They're telling me that they have Civil War soldiers and they want to know what kind of records are available. A couple times a month, I'll get an email that goes something along the lines of, here's the name of my soldier. I don't know what regiment he's in, and I've never been able to find any record of him serving, so I don't know where his records are. And right away, I'm thinking, I think I might know what's going on here. But I ask some questions. What kind of proof do you have that he was in the Civil War? Because a lot of times there will be a clue on there somewhere, a regiment name, something that maybe they're not familiar with what they're looking at, but I can pick up on something that they're missing. 9 times out of 10, what they're showing me is a draft registration record from Ancestry. And I know I have to be a heartbreaker at that point and tell them this Civil War soldier that you're so proud of, the reason you're not finding him in the records anywhere, it's quite possible that he was never even drafted. And therefore, unfortunately, maybe was never even in the Civil War at all. Those draft registration records are probably, I'm not going to say probably, in my opinion, they are the most misunderstood Civil War record that's out there. Confuses people all the time. And I don't blame anybody for the confusion because the name of the collection says right on there, Civil War. You have to look at carefully at what you're looking at here. That's a draft registration ledger. This is simply a record of people who registered for the draft. It's not a record of people who enlisted in the war. It's not a record of men who were drafted. Not every man on that list was drafted. Not every man on that list even served in the Civil War. It's simply the list that they used to conduct the draft. Kind of an analogy. When I turned 18, I had to fill out a selective service card in case there was a draft. I would be in the draft pool. Well, there's never been a draft in my lifetime. I never served in the military. 100 years from now, if someone finds that card and they say, oh, this is a military draft card, Brian must have been in the military. No, I simply was eligible to be drafted if that ever became a situation. For the Civil War, it was reality. There was a draft going on. They were making a list of all the men that were of fighting age and eligible to be drafted. They made these lists and then they conducted the draft. 160 years later now, all of those have been digitized and they're on Ancestry. People get all excited when they see that because they think that their ancestor was in the Civil War. He may have been in the war, but we don't know that for sure just by looking at that ledger. Now, there is one example of when you may be able to use that to determine that there was Civil War service. If you look at this right here, there's a column that says former military service. If that box is filled out, they were already in the Civil War. The draft took place in 1863. The war had been going on for 2 years. Some of these men had already served and were discharged. So, in those cases, if you find your soldier on there, yes, you probably have a Civil War soldier. But aside from that particular column right there, just be careful when you're viewing these draft registration records that you don't make the mistake of just assuming he was in the Civil War because you found him on this record. And if you contact me and you think he was in the war, I might have to break your heart. And I don't like doing that. So look around. Are there other resources that show that he was in the war aside from this? Does his gravestone have anything on there about the military? Does his obituary mention any military service? Was he alive in 1890? There was a special census taken of Union veterans that listed all the surviving Union soldiers or their widows. Now, not every state, those records still exist. I think it's K, like Kentucky through the end of the alphabet. Those records still exist. Beginning of the alphabet, they don't. But there's a lot of resources out there to help determine if your ancestor was in the Civil War. Draft registration ledgers for the most part, they're not one of those records. So just be careful. I don't want to break your heart. And as always, if you do determine that you do have a Civil War soldier, it can probably help you get the records from the National Archives. You can visit my website, civilwarrecords.com, and get more information about how to get started.